How about now? Greetings, everybody. Welcome to our final Hot Talk of the season. It's been a really fun one, and when we first were putting these together, and I had talked to Pam, I was just talking to some folks around camps, and Pam's like, I have definitely had something to do for this. Pam Saalfeld has been here at Northeast for 26 years. She has worn a lot of hats while she's here. She was an instructor of journalism, theater, and English. She was an associate dean for a while, and now she is the director of global multicultural engagement. She helped develop the college, or I don't think helped, just developed the college's introduction to Shakespeare class, and then led Northeast students abroad on a Shakespeare-themed educational experience in 2018, which might have been her first international travel?
Oh, no. My first international travel? No.
No, ours.
Oh, ours. No, our first international travel was in 2012.
Uh-huh.
We went with Adam Peterson to England and to Paris. And since then we went to Spain and Italy, the next time with Wendy and Christy. And
Pam is the reason why we get to travel as much as we do and get to send students out everywhere. And even beyond Shakespeare, anybody who knows Pam knows that she loves the Beatles. She was born in the wrong country. Pam should be English, but instead she was taught English.
I am English culturally.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So, without further ado, for our final Hot Talk of the season, Pam Saalfeld.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to see so many of you, and I've had fun when you come in waving at you and saying hello and trying to do so. Very good. So, and I'd like to just introduce my very best friend and daughter, Hillary Saalfeld, right here. She came from Omaha to support me, and if I fall off the chair, she'll help pick me up, so you don't worry.
She's a Northeast legacy.
She is. Indeed she is. So I'm going to start with this little tidbit. Someone asked me a while back how I'd like to, when I die, how would I like to be remembered? And I answered quickly, which is unusual because it's kind of an unusual question for someone to just come up and ask you that. But when I die, how would I like to be remembered? And I said I'd like to be remembered in two ways. Number one, I'd like to be remembered as a generous person. And number two, I'd like to be remembered as a person who can tell a good story. So I'm going to start tonight's talk with a story that is absolutely true. And it starts with this film, Shakespeare in Love. 1998, Gwyneth Paltrow won Best Actress for the award. And this lady, Dame Judi, I know, she's funny looking, Dame Judi Dench as Elizabeth I, she won Best Supporting Actress. She also holds the record for winning an award at the Oscars for the shortest screen time in history. The movie was about 2 hours, 15 minutes. Her role was 8 minutes on screen, and for that she won Best Supporting Actress. So this movie was playing here in Norfolk, and I went to it. And about 4 rows up from me were a young man and a young lady, a boy and a girl, probably on their first date, at least an early date, because you could tell by the way they were talking and the actions that they were doing and things. And just to let you know, I wasn't eavesdropping. They were talking rather loud, so I could hear them. And they were talking about various things, and I was kind of just waiting for the movie. And then all of a sudden, boy turns to girl, and he says, "Do you like Shakespeare?" And I thought, what a cool question to ask on a first date. So I have to admit, I leaned in because I wanted to hear the answer. "Do you like Shakespeare?" he asked. And girl turns to boy and she said, "Well, I would if he wrote in English." I was mortified. If I could have, I would have vaulted over those 4+ rows and given her a good tongue lashing about how she possibly could say something like that. So it made me wonder, what was girls' experience in Shakespeare, or lack of experience, that led her to such an incredibly unintelligent response? How come she didn't know how important Shakespeare was to her everyday life? And I ask you, do you know how important Shakespeare is to your everyday life? Every day, I'll bet you today, you've said something or done something that can be directly related to Shakespeare. We'll find out. And it's going to start with this neat little book. This book is the first folio. It's called Shakespeare's First Folio. It is a compilation of Shakespeare's 36 plays, of his probably 37, 38, arguably number of plays. 36 plays in this compilation. It was compiled by two of his comrades, two of his theater buddies, John Hemmings and Henry Condell, and they compiled it in 1623, 7 years after Shakespeare's death. So let's do the math, can we? 1623, 2023. Happy birthday, First Folio! 400 years old. 400 years old. And you are getting to see, this is the second most important piece of literature in all of history. Second only to the Gutenberg Bible. The Gutenberg Bible because of its introduction of movable type, the printing press. But this First Folio is the second most important contribution to the English language. Now, got to take a step back just a second. I'm an old English teacher, as Paul said, and every good English teacher knows that a speech or a paper needs to have a thesis statement. So what is our thesis statement tonight? Shakespeare isn't just a dead playwright. That's what we learned. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
The fact that you instinctively answered that way is testament already to the influence Shakespeare has in your life, because do you know Shakespeare invented the knock-knock joke? That is absolutely true. He invented the knock-knock joke. Macbeth, Act 2, Scene 3, the character of the porter. The porter is a minor character in Macbeth. He plays a drunk, and in this particular scene, he's drunk and kind of sleepy. He hears knocking on the door as Macduff and Macduff's buddies are coming in shortly after the king has been killed. And he says this, and I'll see if I can do my best porter for you. Knock, knock. Is there, in the name of Beelzebub, is a farmer that hanged himself on the expectation of plenty? Come in time, have napkins and our voucher, you'll sweat for it. Knock, knock, who's there? In the other devil's name? Faith is an equivocator that could swear in both the scales against either scale, who committed treason enough for God's sake, yet could not equivocate to heaven. Oh, come in, equivocator. Knock, knock, knock. Who's there? Faith, here's an English tailor come hither for stealing out of a French hose. Come in, tailor, here you may roast your goose. So you hear knock-knock jokes all over there. That is from Shakespeare. So if you've told a knock-knock joke today, thank Shakespeare for it. And if boy had told girl a knock-knock joke that night, she would have been up close and personal with the bard. So how do we convince girl, bring girl back, here she is. How do we convince girl and others like girl, some of you perhaps, of the significant role Shakespeare plays in your everyday life? Well, since we're talking about knock-knock jokes, let's start with language. Many of us, like girl, are convinced we don't understand Shakespeare's plays. We don't understand Shakespeare's language. We actually look at it, like girl did, as a foreign language. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. It's hard for you to see this, but that's okay. I've got a copy. So what we're going to do is some audience participation in just a little bit. I'm going to ask you first, how do we read a sentence? What does a sentence begin with?
Capital letter.
Capital letter, right. And what does the sentence end with? Period, or some sort of punctuation. And so when you read a sentence in your textbook or your newspaper or online, you read it from capital letter to punctuation, right? You don't read it line by line, where it's broken line. And that's the same thing with Shakespeare. Read Shakespeare from capital letter to punctuation. Read it, don't read it as a broken up line. So this is from Hamlet. It is his first folio, or excuse me, not first folio, it's his first soliloquy. And just listen to it first, and then we'll do some playing around. Promise it won't hurt. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannons against self-slaughter. Oh God, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of the world. Fire, fire. 'Tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed, things rank and gross in nature possessive merely. That it should come to this. But 2 months dead, nay, not so much, not 2. So excellent a king that was to this Hyperion to his satyr, so loving to my mother that he might not beteem the winds of heaven visit her face too roughly. Heaven and earth must I remember. Why, she would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on, and yet within a month, I do not think on it, Frailty, thy name is woman, within a little month, ere those shoes were old, with which she followed my poor father's body like Niobe, all tears. Why, she, even she, oh God, a beast that wants discourse of reason would have mourned longer, married with my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules, within a month. Yet the salt of those unrighteous tears had left flushing in her galled eyes. She, almost wicked speed, to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. It is not, or it cannot come to good. Break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. Okay, now, let's break it up. First of all, Hamlet, happy or sad?
Sad?
Sad, yeah, sad to the point of what? What's he contemplating there?
Suicide.
Yeah, suicide. He says, you know, the everlasting God did not set his cannons against self-slaughter. So, sad guy, to the point of suicide. Why? Let's find out. Let's read a little further. That it should come to this, but 2 months dead, nay, not so. So who's dead? His father. Very good. The king, his father. How was the relationship between mother and father before the death? What do you think?
Loving.
Loving, it seems to be. She, you know, he would not beteem the winds to visit her face too roughly. She hangs on him as if appetite grows. So yes, so loving. Yeah, so we've got loving thing. So let's go a little bit further down the line. And, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, if you can't hear, holler. I'll move up closer. So let's go one more thing. So what else? So the problem, king's dead, father's dead. But what else is a problem? What has happened here? If you look at, married the uncle. Now, to understand the significance of that, that's marrying her brother-in-law, which is kind of icky anyway. But in Renaissance times, it was believed when marriages were consummated, the bloodline mixed, so that close relatives, even though they were not biologically related to one another, the bloodline symbolically mixed, and therefore it was an incestuous marriage. So we know now in our 21st century that in-laws are not biologically related. So if a brother-in-law married a sister-in-law, it would not be an incestuous relationship. But in Shakespeare's day, it was incestuous. So not only is she married, and how fast did she marry that uncle? 2 months? Good guess. Less than within a month. You know, he goes 2 months. Yeah, very good. No, that's okay. Good guess. So sad Hamlet to the point of suicide. We have that his father is dead. His mother has remarried. Not only has she remarried the uncle, her brother-in-law, but she has married within a month's time. So look at that, people. You got that with no trouble. That's the foundation of that whole play. If we read the whole play tonight, which would take us about 4.5 hours, you would know it all. So very good. So if girl thinks that Shakespeare, oh, by the way, I have to talk about this a little bit. Don't ever let anyone cheat you into reading something like this. This is no fear Shakespeare. I call it drunk on beer Shakespeare. Because it's usually translated incorrectly, and it's translated so simplistically that we lose the music of the language. I mean, look down there where it says, oh, so quick to jump in a bed of incest. Oh, come on. What's better than hearing to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets? Ooh. So stay away from that. Stay away from that. Back to girl. If girl thinks Shakespeare is too hard, like learning a foreign language, she'll never realize what she's missing. If she decides to take a vacation to Rapid City, South Dakota, to the reptile gardens, or to Florida, anywhere, she will never see an alligator. Shakespeare coined the word alligator. Now, alligators existed, but they weren't called alligators till Shakespeare coined that phrase for them, so she would never have seen an alligator. And when she's on vacation, she would be able to take luggage. Shakespeare gave us the word luggage. And where on earth would that friendly pilot and co-pilot sit if Shakespeare hadn't given us the word cockpit? And lastly, what would girl ever put in the airsick bag if Shakespeare hadn't given us puke? Those are words that are coined by Shakespeare. Now, let's say that girl accepts that Shakespeare wrote in English. She accepts a little bit that there's some influence in her life, but she's still convinced that Shakespeare's nothing more than a dead, dusty playwright. How do we engage her? Here's the 1948 Hamlet with Laurence Olivier, also an Oscar winner for this, famous To Be or Not to Be speech. sound.
Should it have sound?
It should have sound. I'll try the bottom. Oh. There we go. What's gonna happen?
We can. Is that come through at all?
Can you hear that a little bit?
I think Jen's gonna come sing us.
No promises. Shouldn't be coming from. Well, you just perform it.
We're professionals, clearly.
I don't have it running right now. So.
Yeah, we're trying to. Just make sure that the Bluetooth is on this computer. Make sure it's on.
Sorry, take 5. Yeah, go get some meatballs are delicious.
Bluetooth is on. Make sure that it's. Make sure the device is turned on. Any idea? Is that a Samsung or MRDS 049? Oh, it is.
Yeah, and I worked this evening with these guys.
Well, let's give everybody a chance to get some snacks. So we'll.
Who's in the effect? They had trouble with it this evening too. And I went on my computer, they did what you call it, just turn the volume up. Well, that's all right. This,
Never make it sad. So just.
thank you. Hopefully the other ones. What I'm going to do with this is, and thank you for your patience, and I'm glad we got it snapped right. I was going to say, this is so boring, and it's not the text fault, it's the presentation. So in order to engage, we have to figure out a way to present it so that it becomes meaningful and interesting. So, now we need to be So I need 4 volunteers. 4 volunteers. If I could have some volunteers.
Taylor, Hillary.
We're being voluntold.
Yeah.
Just need 4 volunteers.
Yeah, when
Who have no concern about their own profit. Thank you.
Cortland?
everyone. I need one more
All right,
volunteer.
let's do this.
Okay. Just wait a second. So, in Shakespeare's day, they didn't have copyright laws. In Shakespeare, his whole job was writing plays. So if someone stole his plays, obviously stealing money out of his pocket, right? So they didn't have copyright laws. So what they would do is there would be one person who would have the master script, the whole script, all the lines, all the characters' lines. But the actors only had scripts that had 3-word cues. So you had to sit and listen for your 3-word cue, and that's when you deliver your line. So actors only could see their line as a whole line. So that kept them from stealing the script. So you guys are my actors.
We just have to figure it out as we go. Is that?
Yeah, you'll listen carefully, and you'll read the line according to. Oh, and we're missing. I need one more. I need a dead body. Anyone who wants to be a dead body.
To lay on the floor?
Well, whatever's comfortable for you. Okay, thank you. This is from Julius. This is from Julius Caesar this time. So Julius Caesar. Okay, are you ready? So listen to your keys. Will you be? I'm Mark Anthony. But these are comedians. And this is Julius Caesar. Will you be patient? Will you stay a while? I have overshot myself to tell you of it. I fear I wronged the honorable men whose daggers have stabbed Caesar. I do fear it. Even 4. Oh. Okay, well. I'll read. They were traitors, honorable men.
The
Will,
the
testament. Give me leave.
Come.
Oh no, that's right.
They were villains, murderers. The will. Read the will!
You will compel me to read the will? Then make a ring about the corpse of Caesar. Oh, sure. Okay. Make a ring about the corpse of Caesar, and let me show you him that made the will. Shall I descend, and will you give me leave?
Come down! Descend!
You shall have leave.
A ring stand round!
Stand from the hearse. Stand from the body.
Room for Antony, most noble Antony.
Nay, press not so upon me. Stand far off.
Stand back! Room! Bear back!
If you have tears, prepare to shed them now and see. Anyways, have the enumerations that are on and the dead body. What? Here's 50 cents.
Thank you.
So, those who played my actors, what was the challenge? I mean, we saw one. What was the challenge?
You can't really tell. And like 3 words is not a whole lot of words to all of a sudden have it spring on you and then have to read your line.
Right, exactly. So let's see here. Just so you can see what it looked like. That's their script. One of the scripts. So you see they had the 3 words and then the key. So thank you, volunteers. Okay, so hopefully we've convinced girl about Shakespeare's contribution to language. We've seen how she can become engaged, but is he relevant? Is he relevant to us? I've had people say to me before, well, Shakespeare's just, he's just English. To understand his history plays, you have to study English history or European history. How does it apply to us here in the United States? And I say, well, duh. He's English, of course. However, I will tell you, he has quite a significant role here in the United States, starting with this location, the Folger Shakespeare Library. It is the premier repository for Shakespearean documents, the #1 repository for all Shakespearean documents. It has first folios coming out of its ears, believe it or not. And this is located in Washington, D.C. The second most popular or greatest repository is actually in Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare is born and buried. But the first most popular is Folger's Library. You can go visit that if you're in Washington. Has anyone seen that? Okay, yeah, you can go visit it. You can't get into the reading room unless you have special permission, but you can go in and see the museum and see the gift shop, of course, and then see the reading. There's a couple of other places you can visit there, the theater. So here's one place. Going to New York City and back a few years to 1850, New York City Winter Garden Theater is the oldest theater in the United States, and you'll notice it is a production of Julius Caesar, and look who's performing in Julius Caesar. Why? It's the Booth brothers, and you might recognize the one who's playing Mark Antony, the part I played, John Wilkes Booth. So maybe not famous, but more infamous, because about 15 years after this play is produced, he is the assassin for Abraham Lincoln. 1993 to 2001, Attorney General Janet Reno, Attorney General for Bill Clinton, she had her staff read King Lear every day, kind of like a book club. And when they'd finish it, they'd start again and read King Lear, which is one of Shakespeare's greatest plays. Interesting. It's about dividing your country up and conquering, so interesting. The Tempest. Now, normally this is traditionally one of Shakespeare's last plays, and you wouldn't necessarily associate The Tempest with the United States or with the New World, but it is probable that Shakespeare was influenced to write The Tempest by a hurricane that took down a supply ship that was heading to the Jamestown colony. So Paul, I'm sure you teach about the Jamestown colony in the early American. Maybe you'll have your students read The Tempest. And we'll see. This was one of our videos, but it might not play.
Oh, this one.
You can hear that a little
Yeah.
better, huh? Sure. just like watching the guys get drug off. That's the only reason why I played the whole clip. All right, like I said, love the dragon scene.
Yeah.
Just like today, entertainment is based on popularity, fans or ratings, how popular something is. And that was true in Shakespeare's time as well. Shakespeare was part of the King's Men, so they were actually the theater company who were privy to King James I of England. So they were very important, and they really were making pretty good money for a while, pretty good bank, until a new fad came into play, and it was the children's theater. And it wasn't just like children's theater like your nativity play or like, you know, Bambi or something like that. They were children playing adult roles, sort of like you had this, Scarface, the school play. Let me introduce you to my little friend. Okay? That's from Scarface. So we find out, we know about this from Shakespeare's contemporaries, but we also know about it from Shakespeare because Shakespeare was so irritated by the fact that these little kids were playing adult roles and were stealing all the thunder that he actually writes about it in Hamlet. And this scene I'm going to read real quick, a little excerpt from it, is when Hamlet is talking to his friends Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and he's in Elsinore in Denmark, and his friends tell him that the players who used to be big in the city are now in the country. And so Hamlet says, how come? How come they're on tour? How come they're on tour? So just a short little bit here. So Hamlet says, how comes it? Do they grow rusty? Nay, their endeavor keeps in the wonted pace. But there is, sir, an area of children, little asses, that cry at the top of question and are most tyrannically clapped for. In other words, people are like crazy for them. These are now the fashion, and so be rattled the common stages, as they call them, that many wearing rapiers are afraid of goose quills and dare scarce come thither. What? Hamlet says. Are they children? Who maintains them? How are they escorted? Will they pursue the quality no longer than they can sing? Will they not say afterwards, if they grow themselves to common players, as is most like, if their means are no better, their writers do them wrong to make them exclaim against their own succession. Faith, there has been much to do on both sides, and the nation holds it no sin to tarry them to controversy. There was for a while no money bid for argument unless the poet and the player went to cuffs. In the question, in other words, there's actually been some scuffles in the street about this. So, to put it into relevant terms for us, it's kind of like having these guys and then suddenly going to where these guys are. And those who know me know that this was a challenge for me to find the contemporary music, but I know who these guys are. Don't ask me the difference between Beyonce and Rihanna. I don't know. All right. So, we've shown you Shakespeare's relevance in the United States, but you might be sitting there saying, well, okay, got it. Washington, D.C., New York City, but it's not relevant to us here in Northeast Nebraska. It's not relevant to us at Northeast Community College. Shakespeare can't possibly be relevant to us here. Au contraire. You might recognize the instructor, Roger Walker, second-year building instruction instructor, and these are his building construction students. And I took them to England in, I think, 2017. And they had a fantastic time because they were analyzing buildings that were thousands of years old, much, much older than anything they had seen or worked on. And they would say, "Mr. Walker, how do those bricks go together like that? How is that building still standing? Look at the seam work they did on that." And they loved, absolutely loved going to the Globe Theater. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Okay. Well, you're not getting the Globe Theater, you're getting the Cools. But the Globe Theater, they loved going to the Globe Theater because the Globe Theater was octagonal shaped. It is built with no metal pegs, no metal beams, no metal whatsoever. It's all wooden pegs. It's built accurately to the original Globe of the 1599. It has a thatched roof on it. It's the only thatched roof building in the city of London, which is another story I can tell you about someday. And they just were fascinated. How did that building get put together? How could it stand? So there we have students who found Shakespeare extraordinarily relevant, and they're Northeast students. They're no longer here. They're, I'm hoping, in their career somewhere else. But Roger Walker's there. So next time you see him, say, "I saw your picture in the presentation Pam gave on England." He'll laugh. He'll enjoy that, I'm sure. So now, finally, we've done a lot of things here. We've convinced the girl that Shakespeare writes in English. We've maybe convinced her that he has some influence on her. We've looked at the relevancy. We've looked at ways to engage. Now, how is Shakespeare cool? Well, he's part of our popular culture. Here's one way.
William Shakespeare, I'm Sam Krubish.
Sam Krubish? Don't you recognize me, Sam, honey?
Witch Hazel, is it really you?
Why didn't you show up that night to meet my folks.
I went to apartment 2B like you said, but you
To
were
be. I never said to be.
Oh, yes, you did so say 2B. Remember you said 2B.
I didn't say to be.
Yes,
To
yes.
be or not to be. That is the question.
Stay just a quick second. I'll use you again if I don't. If it's okay. Even, so there you go, that. Even Guinness Book of World Records is influenced by Shakespeare and makes Shakespeare cool because in order to be recognized as the world's fastest talking person, you need to be able to read the famous "to be or not to be" speech from Hamlet in a record fast time. So here's the champion. Paul, if you don't mind holding for me.
Is this the real life? Is this just passing comment outside? No escape from reality. Organized with double skies and see I'm just a cool bite. You know, simply because I'm easy, come easy, go a little high, little low, anyway, no such thing that I mean to me. Hi, I'm Sean Shannon, and I have the record for doing the famous "to be or not to be" speech. A little quicker than that. To realize what's there's no life, so listen, it's not so much fortune, no take home, seems to see troubles by building him to die, to sleep no more, life, sleep, save me, and the heart, no thousand aftershocks, the flesh, the journey, the constipation, no, the twist, to die, to sleep, sleep, gentry, my vest, to run for that sleep, death, when you come in, shift off, mortal coldness, gives spot, there's this break, this collapse, your life, for this, the best around the pyramids, consuming the pangs, the slice, love, the lost, light, insults, and the smart, the patient, man, the release, when someone's questing me with a broke rock, foot flowers, the roots, where you left, that are just, I'm death, in discovered countries, run returns, paths, the wilderness, and fearless, as we have the funds, we know, this conscious, and cameras, and all this, native, influence, we see both, like it's not, and rise, great, pith, move, this guard, the current, turn around, this of action. Now, that was not my perfect one. To get the record, I had to make no mistakes. I know I made three mistakes I can recall I made, but it gives you an idea of how fast it sounds. It's hard to get the record. You can't make any mistakes. And since 1995, but I can still talk. So when I first became interested in
So, let's go full circle. Let's go back to girl, full circle. Hopefully, if she were here, we'd manage to at least have her acknowledge Shakespeare indeed writes in English, and maybe she'd have a little more appreciation of how he is important in her daily life. If not, she'll never be able to go upstairs or live in a farmhouse or have any kind of excitement. She'll never be able to go downstairs. She's stuck, man. She'll never be able to eyeball it. She'll never be able to play leapfrog. She'll never get the hint. She won't be able to unclog her drains. She won't be able to hobnob with the upper class. She won't be able to get involved with boy in kissing. She will be totally unaware, but she won't know it. She can't gossip. She would never be able to be hired as a manager. If she likes them, she would be able to have an anchovy on her pizza. She would never be able to get an obscene phone call. Maybe she wants one. She could never make a compromise. She would never be able to drink skim milk. She would never be able to observe how something is flawed. She would never be able to use a fortune teller. She couldn't be a critic of this particular presentation. And she wouldn't get a love letter or any of the 2,000 to 5,000 words that they estimate Shakespeare has contributed to the English language, and there's many more than those. She wouldn't also know phrases like green-eyed monster for when she's jealous of either boy or other boy. She would never know little pitchers have big ears when she wants to listen in on something. She would never know there's method to my madness, which is from Shakespeare, from Hamlet. And she'd never know cruel to be kind. And if she doesn't know cruel to be kind, how can she ever appreciate the 1979 Nick Lowe, one-hit wonder hit, Cruel to Be Kind. And if you know the song, sing along. We won't listen to the whole, oh, whoops, we won't listen to the little one. How many remember this? Oh, I can't say another heartache, though you say you're my friend. I'm at my wit's end. You say your love is a bonfire, but then you coincide with the things that you do. And when I ask you to be nice, you say, sing along to them. Cruel to be kind in the right direction. Cruel to be kind, it's a very good sign. Cruel to be kind means that I love you. Gotta be cruel, gotta be cruel to be kind. Oh, let me play this a little bit. Can we play this a little bit longer? This is the favorite part of the okay? Stand here, but you're still mystified. I wanna know why I picked myself up off the ground to have you knock me right down again and again. And when I ask you to explain, you say, everybody, cruel to be kind in the right measure. Cruel to be kind, it's a very desire. Cruel to be
Hear you, Wendy.
means that I love you, baby. Gotta be cruel, gotta be cruel. I just like this next part. Okay, that's it. And we'll end it there, but, so thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed this presentation, and I would entertain any questions, comments, concerns you might have.
I got to say, we're not letting you go quite yet because this is, I think now's a good time for some plugs. So I do want to give everybody a few minutes to, if you have any questions for Pam.
Yeah. I can say it from here, dear God. I never want to hear you on the video. I'm really curious about the emergence of the children in the play. Never heard of this.
Yeah,
What led to that? Who was behind it? Was it supported by the king? Lots of questions, but
oh, okay.
this is the first I've heard of this.
Yeah, so there was several companies of children, the children of the chapel, St. Paul's children were two of the popular ones, and they were supported by, actually, largely by Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson was a playwright who sort of had a love-hate relationship with Shakespeare. Ben Jonson put up a lot of money to support the children's theaters and was right for the children's companies. They were popular with the people, so popular, like I said, that Shakespeare actually writes it in Hamlet, the criticism of that. So they lasted for, about 2-3 years. They weren't long lasting, but they lasted a while. And their appeal was, in kind of a weird way, people would come and watch these plays and they'd see like something like Romeo and Juliet, for example, played by little kids, little children. And of course those would all have been boys because girls could not act on stage at this time in the English theater. That didn't come along until 1620, I believe, is when they had the Restoration. So, did that answer for you?
Yes.
Yeah. So look up St. Paul's or Children of the Chapel sometime, and you'll get a little bit more detailed explanation. Good. I'm glad I shocked and awed you.
I got one.
Yeah.
So why do we have so much stuff in the Folgers Museum? Like, it seems kind of nuts to me because moving things across the ocean,
Right.
sometimes things go wrong. The idea of taking any of those original works out of England, I was shocked to hear that.
The Folgers, and I can't remember their first names, but it was a couple, very wealthy, and that he was a collector, and he just collected. And so then when they were giving their legacy away, they said they gave their collection to, I don't know, to build the Folgers Library. So it was just their own personal collections.
This is not the coffee family, I imagine.
Oh, no, it's not the coffee family. Same, sounds like the same name, but it's not the Folgers Coffee. That's a good
Terrible
question.
Anybody else? All right, I want to thank everybody for coming out. This has been a really fun project this year, and I'm really hoping, I think, that I'm going to get some funding for us to be able to do a whole new set of Hawk Talks next year. So I hope to see you back, and keep an eye out on the college's schedule and any other schedules at the library or the museum, because we kind of do a lot of this stuff together. And enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. And make sure you eat. I'm going to go eat now, too.